Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new season of Wisdom Work with Christa and Christy. We would like to acknowledge the fact that we took the past 2 months off, and we will get into a little bit as to why we did. But we missed you all. We missed having this conversation. Christa, I missed sharing this space with you. I'm so excited to be back here today and to dive into our topic, which is really focusing on the new energy of this new season that we're stepping into. September, but really like the fall leading into the winter, coming off of the summer. How does that feel and what is it that we're looking forward to, and all the shifts that will come with the new energy of the new season. So, Christa, how are you today?
Hi, Chris. It's so good to see you and be back with our listeners. I've missed you so much, and I'm so glad we got a chance to see each other in person when I was back on the East Coast.
Yes, we have to talk about that because it was the first time that Christa and I have seen each other in person in over 5 years.
Yeah, it's wild.
Crazy.
And we got to meet each other's kids for the first time.
And the kids got to meet each other, and it was just so nice and like the best treat for us, for sure.
Yes.
So let's get into what we want to talk about today. First, let's talk about the fact of how we took a break and maybe why we took a break. So Christa and I decided to take a break in the beginning of the summer, and it really just happened, well, for me by choice, but also because I needed to. I soon realized as soon as school ended and we were in the swing of summer with my kids and I, that I had to be really honest with myself and with Christa that I didn't have the time to do anything but be a mom. So we've been going to the pool every day and we're just like busy, and it's great and I love it. But in the past, I would say I have, and Christa and I both are this way. We talk about this a lot, recovering from the need to be like always one step ahead and always like, committed to the projects and, sometimes forcing yourself to do things, even if you don't really have the time or you don't really feel like it feels right, but forcing yourself through it for the sake of being productive. Is something that her and I both say we're kind of recovering from that. And so that was a moment for me to say, you know what, Chris, is it okay? I think I really honestly can't do this right now. I was in no way saying I wanted to stop, but I was like, right now, I'm just realizing that in the summer, I can't do this very easily. I don't have a quiet moment in my house to sit and record. But also, I wanted to, speak to the fact that how important that is, I think, in relationships or just in your life in general, to be able to give yourself the permission to say no gracefully, or I need a pause, or right now this doesn't feel right. And Christa was obviously awesome about it and so receptive. And she was just like, sure, like, whatever, we'll figure it out. And it turned into us not recording until now, moving into September. But I think for both of us, we realized that was great. It was a great pause. It was a great choice for us to not push it. And now here we are stepping into, this new season and this new energy, feeling refreshed and not feeling like we pushed through feeling depleted when we didn't need to do that. Right?
Yeah. Yep. And I want to applaud you, Chris, because it takes courage to be able to speak your truth and to do something like we're doing, which is such a heart-centered passion project for us. I know how much you wanted to and how much of like this push-pull within me too. When you said like, oh, can we just kind of not do it for a couple months, or I'm really busy. And I felt like, oh, the listeners, like they do need us, or like, I want to do this. And I appreciated you saying like, I'm not available for it right now. And I want to have a relationship where anybody that comes to me is able to say no. And then I'm okay with their no, because that's something that was so difficult for me when listening to the boundaries talk that we had, of like being able to say, this isn't working for me, and have somebody receive that in such a graceful way is like priceless to me, because it's such a difficult thing for me to even speak. So when other people say their no to me, I want to be that same grace-filled response of like, no worries, like you do you. And then when the stars align, like we'll be back. And what I also wanted to highlight was that the fact that we're back here now, both of us, full like energy, full throttle. Like if we had pushed through, there would have been some resentment or some like, oh, this is just another thing we have to do. I got to figure out a way to get quiet time in my house or whatever it is. It's just like another task, like being mindful about how that energy could be received on the other end. Like, it's just so interesting because everything to me is like an energy exchange, right? So when I'm taking care of my energy and I'm doing all my practices, I show up in the world much differently than if I was frustrated at home, rushing out the door in the morning, not doing my sacred start. I go into traffic and I'm hustling and I'm rushing and I'm late and I have this other energy. Then I go to the supermarket and I'm snippy at the cashier. Like it's just this cascade. So it's like, what are we saying no to that, or what are we saying yes to that we need to say no to? And what are we saying no to that you want to celebrate your no's? Like these are such good things for us to be doing. And how can you receive other people's no's in a way that's grace-filled and compassionate, and knowing that they needed this. This is probably really hard for them to say because we're all working on this right now. And to be able to say like, yeah, no worries, we'll do it another time. And managing your own disappointment because it's not their issue, it's yours.
I think
Right.
it's so important that we're talking about this because I agree. I don't know who listening couldn't relate to this, especially as females, of not being comfortable saying no or feeling obligated to say yes.
Yes.
And you're absolutely right how important it is. And I've realized this in my life. It's so important to surround yourself with people who gracefully take your no,
Yeah.
and don't take offense to it. It's like you said, like it's not something personal. Like you may be disappointed. I may have disappointed you, but for you to be able to take it and say like, I have to give her that grace right now. It's too much for her. And I would
Right.
want her to give me that grace if the situation was different. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think socially we can get ourselves caught in this cycle of like, the minute somebody asks you to do something and you think like, oh God, I can't, or I don't really want to right now, or that feels too much, but we feel this extreme pressure to say yes. I think it's important that we shed light on that conversation too, that, what, like, just like you asked, what is it that you're saying yes to that you could maybe say no? And how can you find ways of creating more space for yourself where you
Mm-hmm.
don't feel so locked in to
Yes.
obligation or, and how can we show up for other people in our lives and give them that space and allow them to say no? And how can we show up for them? So I'm really glad that we touched on that. And I want to move into what our topic today is, which is the new energy of this new season. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually, Chris, I want you to talk about it a little bit because before we hopped on, I think you very eloquently explained the shift between summer into fall and preparing for winter. So can you tell us a little bit of like your perspective on that?
Oh, I'd love to. So for me, September and just the fall season signifies so much of like the new year energy. It's like this fresh, clean slate where we can kind of design new habits and new roles that we want to take on in our lives. Kids are back to school, it's a new season on Earth. Like we're just seeing the leaves change colors, different foods pop up out of the ground, it's squash season, different holidays. We're preparing ourselves for winter. So the summer energy is much more extroverted, right? It's Leo season right now. So it's Leo the lion, which is calling in to your truest self, like letting your true nature roar and letting your freak flag fly, like all of you. We want to see it all. So that's what Leo calls us into in August, that season. Then September is a little bit more like tuning inward. If you can think about it, I always signify like the seasons along with the moon cycle. So a full moon is like summer. And when women ovulate. So it's all this tracking of like big energy, like outgoing, extroverted, announcing, like socializing. That's all that kind of energy. Then when we move into the fall, it's kind of the waning moon, which is getting smaller, preparing for the new moon, which is the winter, or when you menstruate. So it's kind of this inward, introverted energy where you're just kind of reflecting, you're more introspective. It's like hibernation mode in the winter time. So we need a lot more quiet and a lot more space to just kind of reflect, as opposed to the summer where it's just like, woo! And fun and exciting and outward energy. So I love that this is like a pivotal kind of moment in our lives where we can make changes. So we're approaching this new season of September and the fall and kids starting back to school, and just the shift in energy. It just feels different in the environment, doesn't it? Like it just has this clean slate energy to me. So again, thinking about where you are currently, non-judgmentally, just taking inventory of where you are with your life. I like to do this quarterly. Like I like the fall, the new year, the spring season, and then the start of summer, like just to kind of tap in to say, like, where am I putting my energy? Like, where is my energy leaking, and where can I plug that hole and give it to what I actually want to be doing? Because like you said, Chris, a lot of us are stuck with the obligations and we're living our life. All of a sudden, like life goes by and you're like, wow, I didn't even do anything that I wanted to, or I didn't do anything intentionally. It was just kind of like this reactive to people inviting me to places or doing things, the job that I have to keep and to pay the bills and all this stuff, which is all right. Like we have to do all this stuff, but how can we make it work for us as opposed to us work for it? Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. And I really think it's awesome how you touched on both the moon aspect or, that analogy, and then the quarterly check-in, because it's so important, like you said, for us to take a second and just to have a moment, a reason to be intentional about checking in with ourselves and kind of reassessing, and just like you said, deciding, where's my energy going, and where do maybe if I saw it leaking in certain places that I'd rather it not, how can I shift that going into this next season to kind of like buoy myself back up? And I also love that you touched on the introvert versus extrovert. And I want to talk about that because I think that we have kind of, I don't know if you'd say culturally or whatever, we've been conditioned to think, to define yourself as either like I'm extroverted or I'm introverted. But I honestly think we're a mix of both.
Agreed.
And that is something that I've really come to terms with in myself more recently, where I always identified as an extrovert. And I liked that I was like so social and so like, like willing to be extroverted and comfortable in that. But then there was always this pull inside of me of like wanting more quiet space, wanting more time alone, wanting less plans.
Right.
And having this inner battle of like, but that's not who I am. Everybody knows me as an extrovert, so I can't identify as an introvert. And I've been working really hard to shift that conversation within myself, that acceptance within myself, and that acceptance of other people too, is that we can be a mix. And just like you're talking about the seasons, that is how it happens for me. Like I truly 100% look forward to full on hibernation in the winter. Like that is something I really look forward to. Like I love that. I hate to say this, but I love that it's an excuse to like not do that much. I love that it's so freaking cold here in Philadelphia that I have like a reason to say like, I'm not going anywhere, but sitting by my fire with my family, and that's what I want to do. But then as the spring comes, I get so excited for like, oh gosh, being out in my garden and being able to go for a run outside or a walk outside. And then I start to get excited about, I'm going to go to the pool with the kids all summer. We're going to go to the beach. We're going to do all these things. But then always by August, which is where we are right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm like, oh dear God, I need a break. Like I need it to be hibernation time. Like and then I start to get excited. I mean, I love the fall. I love all things. Like football and pumpkin spice coffee. And,
Uh-huh.
I start to get, and like the candles that we'll light and the,
Yep.
starting to do bonfires again. Like, so that also comes into accepting that it's okay to be a different kind of version of yourself in every season,
Love it.
right? Like,
Love
it's
it.
okay. We should accept ourselves for all of the ways that we feel and all the ways that we want to be in every single season of the year, but then
Mhm.
also in every single season of our life, which is constantly changing, evolving, growing, if you're choosing to.
Yep.
And let's start to pay attention to that. Like, I think that something that you and I are really intentional about with this community is continuing to bring up this notion of checking back in with yourself and
Yes.
how important it is to do that on a regular basis, because if you're choosing to grow and evolve and willing to let yourself change and your life change for the better in the process, then you have to be willing to check back in and reassess. Where is my energy being spent where I don't want it to? Where are the areas where I'm saying yes and I could be saying no? Or where are the areas where I'm saying no and maybe I should try and say yes?
Yeah, that's a
You
good one.
know,
Yep.
right? Like, flip that question around. And, I know that sometimes I can get so like, no, I don't want any plans. I don't want to do anything. I don't want that pressure, that I
Mhm.
shut it off completely. And then all of a sudden I'm like,
Mhm.
well, I guess I would like to go out to
Yeah.
dinner every once in a while, or like I would like to get out of my house every once in a while. So yeah, just like being honest with yourself at this check-in point heading
Yes.
into the fall and then winter, and maybe taking those tools that we're always talking about, like doing some guided meditations, some journaling, asking yourself some important questions about where do I
Mhm.
stand now? Look back at what's happened over the summer and, write out the positives, maybe write out the
Yes.
negatives. Just take stock of everything. And
I
then
love that.
going into the fall and winter, maybe write a list of like, what are the things I'd like to work on? What are the things I'd like to let go of?
Yes.
Just constantly staying committed to this process of your own growth journey.
Absolutely, because this is intentional, right? Like this is how we make a life that's meaningful for us and purposeful because we're actually being mindful about it and we're getting out ahead of things, like instead of, like I said, being reactive to life. So we're kind of we're co-creating this with the divine presence in our lives to be able to live a life beyond our wildest dreams. Like that's what we all want, right? It's our birthright. Like we get to have that, which is awesome. But I mean, then there's all this worthiness stuff that comes up. Like, is it okay for me to have everything? And what do I have to do in order to get that? And that's not, it's just not accurate. It's an old program. So we want to just watch that. I love that you brought up the acceptance. That word is what I was going to bring to this conversation today. I was thinking about it because I've been sitting with that word of acceptance and the surrender of what is, the surrendering to what is. Because for me, the intentionality can almost become on overdrive. So being too intentional about things and not surrendering enough. So trying to balance that like everything else and accepting, okay, this came up and let me just look at it. Let me look at how it's making me feel and just waiting, like slowing all the process down of responding or reacting too quickly, because then you have to kind of back up out of that and maybe make amends for things you might have said that you were when you didn't want to speak yet or you're upset. So practicing your tools, whether it's, for me, whenever I get triggered or angry or frustrated, it's like punching a pillow, going for a walk in nature, screaming in the car with all the windows up, like raging on the page. Like seriously, I've done all of these things and it helps. It helps tremendously because emotions are just energy in motion, right? So when you have big emotions, just like our kids, right? When our kids are in this like flipping lid type of zone, they just need to cry or they just need to scream or they just need to feel like somebody's listening or get it out of their body and stomp their feet. Like that's just energy. It's just emotions moving through the body. So I try and do that for myself too. It's like, before I respond to an email or before I, get all heated at somebody that that I'll probably have to apologize to later for what I say. It's like, let me just process all of this first. Let me just integrate it. Let me make like an alchemize of the pain or the suffering that I'm experiencing. And how can I transmute that into love? And this is one of my prayers recently, is like, how can my just pure existence be a walking vessel of love on this planet? And how can every word I speak be laced in love to enhance the silence?
Oh, wow. I love that. That's a good one.
Because it's like, well, you just posted the other day something about like when maturity is not having to speak every thought or feeling you have. And I was like, oh,
I know. That's why I shared it. It hit when I read it, because sometimes you really need to see something on a page in front of you written like that for it to like land.
Yeah.
And I think that's like profound.
Yeah.
For all of
It took me
us.
30 some years to figure
right?
it out.
My girl, Gabby B, who I'm always talking about, Gabrielle Bernstein, she has something that I like to say to myself too. And I think I've maybe mentioned it in episodes prior to this, but it's the saying to yourself, like when you're talking about anything in conversation, stopping yourself and saying like, wait, why am I talking?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Why am I talking? Because I think that we often let our egos just take the microphone.
Yes.
And afterwards you're like, why was I saying that? Why did I
Yes.
but it's because you think that you have to say something. You think that you should be talking constantly. And that's our ego not having enough maturity to zip it.
Yeah.
And and not really understanding that we don't have to say everything we think. We don't have to project every opinion that we have vocally.
Right.
That I just think I love that you touched on that, because it really is so important to be aware of that.
So funny you brought up ego, because I just heard an awesome podcast. I love Michael Pollan. Do you know him?
I think so, but I'm not super
He wrote
familiar.
a bunch of books on food. That's how I was introduced to him originally. He wrote like Omnivore's Dilemma, Food Rules. I forget the other ones, but he just wrote How to Change Your Mind and Your Mind on Plants. So he talks a lot about the psilocybin movement and like how that's helping with mental health and all this kind of stuff.
What is that word you just said?
Psilocybin, it's magic mushrooms. And it's like a lot of,
okay.
Yeah, so a lot of it's the active component, and I'm not an expert, so don't quote me, but a lot of what he's talking about now, he just was on a podcast with, I love the Goop, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh yes, me too.
So she interviewed him, so check it out if you haven't heard. But Michael Pollan, he was explaining his new book called Your Mind on Plants. So he talks about the ego in this podcast interview, and the way he explained ego was unlike anything I had heard before, because ego gets a bad rap, right? Like it gets really villainized and just like, we don't need it, or we need to silence it. And it's like, no, the ego actually keeps us here, like keeps us alive, and it keeps us well, because it's a buffer. It's a buffer for our essence, to buffer against other people, against the planet, against, harm and nature and everything. Like we're able to have this sense of self amongst others and not feel like we're just warped into each other.
I love that, because it's like a protective mechanism if you look at it that way.
Yeah, it's absolutely protective. However,
but where we go wrong is when we lean too heavily towards protective mode.
That's right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but this is like all making sense to me as you say it.
It landed really well with me too, because the way he explained it, he was like, I just like that word buffer, because I thought of that as like a protection agent. But when you think about intimate relationships, or when you think about your connection to nature, like it can almost be harmful, and that's what he said with psilocybin and these journeys, these like medicine journeys people are going on, like ayahuasca or psilocybin, and you're able to melt the ego so that you can connect to a whole new level, on a deeper level, with nature, with others, with love. So it's really, really cool. So anyway, check that podcast out for all the listeners that are interested in more on that topic, because I'm certainly not an expert, but I'm very fascinated by all of this, because it does have really beautiful healing qualities. They're studying psilocybin and psychedelics at Johns Hopkins right now in the pursuit of healing PTSD, depression, and people that are being diagnosed with a chronic illness, and allowing them to have better feelings about crossing over and dying. So
Wow.
yeah, it's
Wow.
really cool. Really
So
cool
crazy,
data.
because I was just having this conversation the other day, and actually this morning too, about like randomly about this and the healing properties of like what they're discovering with,
Yeah,
certain, natural forms,
right.
is
Right.
very fascinating. It's just super
Yes.
fascinating. And, I think it does play into the conversation of all the ways that we are starting to shift the way we look at our own mental health, the
Yep.
way that we are starting to prioritize our own mental health, and finding, natural ways that we, some of this stuff, everything that we talk about, and we say this all the time, that like 10 years ago, we were the woo woo weirdos. And to many, we probably still are. But, that there is sort of this shift happening of realizing like that you have this natural ability within yourself to heal yourself from your traumas, from your past, from any negativity that you're experiencing in your life right now, that we actually, like these, natural things that are helping people medically, we have this natural essence within ourselves and these tools within ourselves, if only we're willing to look, right, and maybe dig a little deeper, that we really have the ability to completely shift our lives. And I'm going to get this wrong, but I was just watching, this is so random, but I was watching, Ryan and I were watching a documentary about Steven Tyler the other night, and it's
Uh-huh.
on Netflix, and it was really good. Whether you're an Aerosmith fan or not, it was really good, because he took this like total other lane and moved to Nashville and made a country record,
Oh.
a solo record. And so it's all about that. But he says this one thing that kept like really hitting me. He said it like 3 times in the documentary, and I'm not going to get this quote right. But he said, we get so comfortable with our own misery that we
Mm.
don't ever take the risk to see where the joy can be found in our lives.
Oh,
I mean, it
that's a
hit me
good one.
so hard. And I don't think he
Yeah.
said it exactly like that, but that's how I got it. And I'm like, God, that's so true. You just get so comfortable with the things that are hard, or you get so
Yeah.
comfortable with the shit that weighs you down sometimes,
Yeah.
that you don't take the time to realize, I possess the ability to shift this. I possess the ability to uh, choose differently for myself. And if I'm only willing to, I have to be willing to take the risk to see where joy exists outside
Mhm.
of all I know right now. And I think that
Mhm.
that's a lot of what we try to facilitate in these conversations, is like that conversation of like, what is it on the other side, the magic that we talk about that's on the other side of your fears and on the other side of the things that challenge you,
Yeah.
where, how can we get from point A to point B? How can we use the tools that we talk about to release and then allow
Yes.
for whatever else is out there for us? And I just think that that also plays into this theme of new energy, that we really have the ability to take stock right now and say, what do I want to let go of? Where do I want to go forward in this new season? How do I want this to use this new season as a healing vessel?
Love it.
Right? That's where I kind of always turn to the winter as, I'm like, this is my time to work on myself more than ever.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
actually in the summer, I am so preoccupied with, everything that's going on like at a crazy speed, that I don't have
Right.
as much time. But then in the
Yep.
winter, like if you decide to be intentional about it, like that's your time to really do some work, so that
That's
when you
right.
emerge in the spring, you have let go of a lot of heaviness. You have shifted your energy so that now you're able to move forward in a
Yes.
lighter way.
I just keep seeing the caterpillar and the butterfly
Yes.
as you're
It's the
talking. It's just
best
like the best
analogy.
metaphor. I know, because it's just like the winter is the cocoon, right? You're nestled in all of your stuff. You're able to take the silence and the quiet to look at everything non-judgmentally again. And then you build the muscles and your wings to kick out, to push out those walls and then emerge in the spring brand new. Right? The spring is so beautiful because it is a season of new life, new beginnings. So use these seasons, like live cyclically, like we're cyclical beings. Just as you said, Chris, like so beautifully, we have the abilities to heal within ourselves at every moment. Like I know from being a health professional, like I have seen like miraculous things happen with people just from food. Like just from food, just from changing your food, numbers plummet. Like I just was with, I started a new job. So I just was with this guy who was with us for 4 weeks, but he had 3 weeks where he got his blood taken when he got here to our retreat. And then he got them tested again when he left. I was astonished at how much his cholesterol had dropped, how much his triglycerides had dropped in 3 weeks. So this is not like 6 months, a year, like usually that's when it happens, but he had just changed his food and his exercise and his mental health. And like you said, which I also love that you brought that up, because Elizabeth Gilbert, who I absolutely adore,
Love her.
she talks about how most people don't realize that she spends, I think she said like 90% of her day on her mental health.
Wow.
And I was like,
that's
same.
goals.
Same. Like, like a lot of what we do, like the spiritual tools, the emotional well-being, the mental health, like keeping this woman in check, because she needs to take a backseat to my heart. But we've been so cultured and programmed to let this guy lead as opposed to this one. So they say it's the longest journey you'll ever take in your life, from your head to your heart, because we need to, and this is again, like the masculine and feminine, we need both. And the yin and the yang, it's like we need both energies, and the extrovert, the introvert.
I was gonna say, and the extrovert, the introvert.
Yeah, like all these polarities, we have them within us, and we need both. They're beautiful, and they serve us at certain points. So use your situational and natural intelligence to be able to pull on what you need when. Like at work, you may need your mind more, but lead with your heart and lace your words in a caring, compassionate way, as opposed to like throwing daggers at people with words. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I'm glad you just said that, because there was something I wanted to bring up earlier and then I lost it, but this was it. And it's the emotional regulation is something that I have actually, so as I take the winter to be like my own internal time to work on myself, I actually take the summer to be the time that as a family, I can work on things with my kids, especially. And emotional regulation was the theme I chose for this summer, that I really
lucky them.
I know, but like for myself too, because I realized like last summer, looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not proud of the fact that I was so reactive to just being overwhelmed by how stressful the summer can be for me sometimes, because the kids are home every day, all day. And a lot is needed of me all day long, and we're on the go, and we got so much going on. And that I didn't like the fact that if I looked back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just reacted with so much negativity to the stress that I was feeling. And I don't want to do that this summer. So I went into it first with my own goals of like every single morning. I've been waking up. Now the kids sleep in. They didn't used to, but this summer my kids are sleeping in. So I would sit in my bed for 45 minutes doing guided meditations. And that set the tone for my day every single day, so that when I was hit with those moments of what I normally would have just reacted negatively and like maybe yelled at the kids or just like lost my patience, I didn't, because I had this feeling of like, I love that peaceful feeling that I created this morning. That's what I want to carry throughout my entire day. So I prioritized it. Right. So that was my emotional regulation. And then with the kids, I've been trying to help them see it's okay. Like you were saying, like when they like kick and scream, or they're freaking out, or they're flipping their lid, it's because they have to, they need to.
Right.
And it's actually a really important experience for them in their childhood, especially, to know what to do when I'm there and I need to release this. How can I choose a way to do it that doesn't like hurt anybody else around me or myself?
Mm-hmm.
And then what can I do as soon as I've gone through it that can be restorative?
Yes.
So like I see it happen all the time with my daughter, and it's beautiful to me that she's figured out how to do this. She
Oh,
will lose it, she will just kind of be like at her wit's end, or something upsets her, or she's mad about something and she kind of just like loses it, which we all do.
sure. That's, yeah, part of life.
And she will immediately come back to me like 10 minutes later and be like, I'm really sorry, like I just was
Wow.
tired, I'm sorry. And we'll talk about, oh, that it's totally fine, it's okay, but how can we handle that situation better the next time when you
Yes.
start to feel mad, or like, can you go into your room maybe and like remove yourself from the situation, scream into your pillow, do something by yourself so that that energy doesn't spill into the whole family's vibe,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that is the emotional regulation that we've been working on. And I just bring that up because I think that it's so important, the work that we're doing, to expose our kids to it too. Maybe not as fully as we're diving in, but like plant those seeds in them as
Yes.
you learn something, pay it forward to your kids, because that's how we are shifting the world going forward in a
Yep.
much more positive way, is by planting those seeds in our kids, so that when my daughter is my age and she's all stressed out with her kids in the summer, maybe she won't even have to go through the lesson that I did of
Yeah.
having a really stressful summer and then the next summer realizing I don't want that. Like
Right.
maybe she'll already show up and be like, I know how to be kind of balanced in this scenario.
Oh,
Right?
and so it shall be, or something even better beyond her wildest dreams.
Yes, I was gonna say, Krista, say that again, because you always say that and it's like the best mantra for me. Say it again.
Yes. And so it shall be, or something even better beyond her wildest dreams.
Yes, we all need
Yeah.
to live with that. And I think,
Yeah.
as we wrap up this conversation about energy and the new energy, that the things I would say we should really focus on to take away from this conversation are: take stock right now as your summer wraps up and as you head into this new season. What is it that you want? And also, what are you proud of? What are you proud
Yeah.
of in yourself and in your life for the past few months?
Mhm.
Really build on the positives first, I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
Then
Highlights of the
highlights,
summer.
right. And then highlight your negatives too, because we need to be real with ourselves and with like what needs to still be addressed and all the ways
Mhm.
that we can still grow. And then set yourself up for like, what are the tools that I'm going to use heading into these new seasons, the fall and the winter, to, either come within, or just like, what are the things I want to work on? So
Mhm.
what are things that you would like to leave us with, Chris, for this
I would say
conversation?
one of the things that I've been really focused on is remembering my exhale.
Mm.
We inhale involuntarily every single day. Thank God,
Yeah.
goddess. But sometimes we forget to exhale, and we have about 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day and about 20,000 breaths.
Woo. That's a
So, and a lot of
crazy statistic.
yeah, so our mind's going at warp speed, and our bodies are nature. If you ever saw that meme where it's like the fingerprint and the tree print are like the exact same. Did you ever see that?
I've
It's really
never seen that.
beautiful. I'll try and find it. We could post it on Wisdom Work, but we are nature. So when you feel like you are at warp speed, and another stat to just give you an idea of, a person 100 years ago took in as much information in its entire lifetime as we do in one day. So like
I can't handle that.
so we're
That's
just
insane.
sponges. Like we need to slow the F down. So
Yes.
I have to, my practice has just been, instead, I mean, even now, like when I feel myself talking too fast, I'm doing a lot of presentations at work. I get very excited and passionate about the topics I talk about. And there, like I love what I do, luckily. But I get really amped and I get really in my head and I'm talking about knowledge, and I have to remember to be embodied. So that exhale for me is the quickest and most powerful tool that I have anywhere, anytime, all day, every day. So it's just remembering to complete the exhale. If you want to get fancy, you can double the length of your exhale than your inhale. So that's like a simple breath work technique. So you just inhale for 1, exhale for 2 counts, or inhale for 2, exhale for 4 counts. Makes sense? So inhale for 3, exhale for 6. So
I'm doing it as you're telling me this.
Good, you're embodied. See, you're quick learned. So when you're exhaling, you just remember to complete it. That's it. Like just in yoga, right? Instead of transitioning before you're completing your breath cycle, you just hold it for one more breath, like, or the exhale needs to be complete in order to start the next movement. So it's just this union. It's this yoking with nature, with your body, with your mind. Like we always talk about alignment, like keeping everything in sync has been really important. And for me, the easiest thing to remember when the overwhelm comes in, or when the thoughts keep spiraling quicker and quicker and quicker, and I'm ruminating, or I catch my brain like just going nuts, it's like, remember the exhale. Remember to slow down. Another grounding technique I use is keeping my feet on the ground. Like you can either sit or stand, and focus on pushing all of your energy down into the Mother Earth, because she holds it all for us. She does anyway, whether we do this or not. It just helps us when we're intentional about it. So we just pull all the energy and we give it to her. She can hold it. And then we can add this little extra blessing or prayer, but you push it all the way down to the center of the earth. She transmutes it for us, and then she gives us back our life force.
Oh, I love that.
So it comes in through our feet.
Great visual.
Yeah, it comes in through our feet, or it can come in through the base of your spine. That's the Kundalini energy, that serpent kind of energy that wraps up your spinal cord. It's also where we have our whole nervous system. No coincidences.
Yes.
Where we hold trauma and memory. So remember to breathe. That's all.
That is a powerful, powerful way to leave us today. I think that you just gave us some great reminders and tangible tools. So thank you everybody for listening and for giving us the grace to take 2 months off and come back with a fuller heart and a fuller energy. And we hope that you take that as your own lesson too, forward in your life, to give yourself and the people in your life the grace to pause and the ability to avoid that resentment that could build up, and just be honest and true, and use this new energy moving forward in this new season to live the life that you truly want to live, as Christa says, beyond your wildest dreams.
Yes, and so it shall be.
And so it shall be. And we will see you here next time. And next month, we will be back with another episode of Wisdom Work with Christa and Christy.